I was asked my view on lunges versus pistol squats, and I wasn't too sure, so I asked my buddy, Boris the Blade.
Drop the gun, fat boy.
All right, Boris. Easy. It's only an exercise. Time to move across the spectrum to the lunge. So, what is a lunge? I define a lunge as anything that breaks the x-axis and puts your foot in the y-axis. Now, a couple of times I've read in the comments section, the old pistol squat's been sniffing around the lunge area, trying to get a piece of the lunge glory. Now, I can only assume that the reason for this is that it's a 1 foot type exercise where the free leg goes into the y-axis, allowing it to masquerade as a lunge. But it is not a lunge, it's an imposter. It's a squat in lunge clothing. And I blame CrossFit. But that's another story. So let me explain where the pistols fit in. It's a good 1 foot hip flexion extension pattern, and it translates well into sport. You can express full range of movement with it, and I like the fact that it allows you to see your imbalances in terms of neural control between your adductors, specifically your pectineus and your adductor brevis, and your glute min and your glute med. It shines a light on lateral pelvic instability through lack of neural control, and that's a good thing. But it doesn't solve the problem just by doing it. You can do this exercise like some sort of demented Russian Cossack at a party. Now don't get me wrong, just performing an exercise isn't going to solve problems because a body is so smart it can find any way to shirk off class and skip school. You have to know what you're trying to achieve. Now there's balance involved and you're trying to make sure the foot doesn't collapse into pronation. There's also butt winking, which personally I think is absolutely fine. I know it's debatable, but I think these videos are made for sprinters, and most sprinters have an anterior tilted pelvis, so that's not a problem for them. And non-sprinters, don't feel left out. I see more anterior tilted pelvises in Gen Pop than I do posterior, so chances are probably help you too. But all the squat rules still apply. You're still trying to keep the scapulars pulled back and down. You're not trying to round the whole spine unless you're using it as a stretch. And this is where your personal anthropometry is really going to make the biggest difference. And that's going to affect where you need to put the weight as a counterbalance to your own body. Basically, people have got different limb lengths, and that's going to affect where you need to carry the weight to make sure you don't keel over. But ballistically bouncing in and out of this position with a loose back just to win some sort of gold star from a box boss, or I don't know, whatever the head of a gym box is called, seems pretty senseless to me. And even if you were dead shot with a perfect pistol, be under no illusions. This is a squat pattern. It's not a lunge pattern. It doesn't have the hip hyperextension component, and it's the back leg and what the back leg does that makes the lunge pattern infinitely superior for a sprinter. Essentially, El Pistoles is the deep front foot version of the lunge without all the length and strength rebalancing of the hip flexors. And it's the rebalancing and the lengthening and strengthening of the hip flexors that make the lunge super special for speedsters. Unless you plan on being a 60-meter specialist, 6/10 of the 100 meters is a top speed endeavor for most. That is hip hyperextension. People are in a dry phase with lean for 40 meters. Now, as you get faster, you can drive for longer, but whoever you are, after 40 meters, you're transitioning in some way to a top speed position. You want fast times? You need good top speed, and top speed positioning requires long, strong, powerful hip hyperextension. And to get that, you need to take yourself over to the lunge spectrum. Now here guys, I'm in a bit of a dilemma. I've already covered the whole movement pattern spectrum thing in another series of videos, women's strength training. And if you're a male sprinter, then there was no particular reason for you to have watched those, except for the fact that I put super hot women in there for you. But now there is, because that's where I put all the squat theory too. It's like hiding a diamond in a cake. Now obviously I could re-say all that stuff with nice little pictures, but come on guys, help me out. I'll link it, check it out. The whole lunge spectrum thing will make a lot more sense if you do. It's a win-win. I get the views, you get the knowledge. It's a tremendous deal, believe me. Now with the lunge spectrum, if you break the X or the horizontal axis, you're in lunge town. Population U. But with a small distance apart, the focus is really on the front leg. It's really a 1 foot supported squat. Go 2 foot lengths apart and you're now into a tripod squat. But don't be confused by the squat. That's just a nomenclature problem. It's like koala bears. You know, they're not really bears, they're marsupials. We call it, well, I call it a tripod squat, but really it's a baby version of the lunge. And it's actually got a huge transfer over to the block start position. I call it tripod, by the way, because both feet and the knee is in contact with the ground. Now, to be fair, if you take the distance of your feet from your blocks position and you apply that to this exercise, it's even more tailor-made. But obviously do both sides to keep your pelvis level. As you get more and more advanced though, by splitting the feet further and further apart, you're encouraging more hip hyperextension. If you do the lunge like it's taught in fitness classes, where the knee is in line with the hip, then this becomes a front leg dominant exercise. But look at yoga. They've got a position that is designed to stretch the hips, rebalance the body, and release stress. It's a body weight exercise, but they also have the body weight squat. So is it a massive stretch in biomechanical knowledge to think that the weighted lunge, if done to rebalance the weighted squat, would have the same effect? Mostly though, the reason for sprinters to do the lunge in the weights room is that it returns the firing pattern back to sprinting. A great German coach and friend told me of the importance of doing the running pattern after weights to re-ingrain the running stride, because squatting is such a strong stimulus. If you do a heavy squat session and then go and do 6 100s on grass, it feels awkward. If you do a heavy lunge session and then do 6 100s, it feels sweet. It feels like you're being driven forward. If you've done it right, the connection in hyperextension between your hip and the ground is perfect. This obviously depends on how you do the lunge. I mean, if you're doing it the fitness industry way, then get ready for knee pain. But if you're doing it either focusing on leaning forward from the hip for acceleration because you're stretching the front glute, or you're staying upright, which emphasizes the back leg for top speed, then that's going to really help you sprinting. It's important to realize though that your positioning in any exercise is a reflection of your balances and your imbalances. If you're trying to get the hip hyperextension position through lumbar extension, then that's going to injure you. And in the same way, if you're trying to get that acceleration lunge position, but you're doing it through back flexion rather than deep hip flexion, that's more back pain there. And remember, the first movement for either of these positions is the hip first. Get in the position, then move the hip first, not the knee. And contract the back glute at all times. Squeeze it like your manhood depends on it. This is going to help re-lengthen the front of your quad, and be mindful that you need to keep your pelvis as level as possible at all times. Now here's a quick activation drill for the hip hyperextension, and you can actually load this exercise if you want. Take that flat of your foot and put it right up against that wall, like so. Put yourself in a position like this, pull the belly button in, squeeze the glutes, go down, pushing onto that back wall, push up from the back wall. Going down, pushing onto that back wall, push up from the back wall. And as if by magic, a barbell appears. Again, flat foot against the wall, barbell on, ow, and then push up against the wall, pushing back against the wall. And just remember, the lunge is awesome for the front leg, but it's in a league of its own when it comes to the back leg. And I haven't even mentioned yet the internal and external rotation lunges, which are amazing for lateral hip stability, but I'll leave that for another video. And if you still want to be an exercise gunslinger, but you want the back foot bonus too, then it's worth considering the front foot elevated lunge. Then you get the depth for the front foot and the rear foot hip hyperextension. Plus, it's also a lot easier to load with some significant weight. Regarding the lunge, if you need more information on how to do it, I got a lunge folder. Check it out. It's free till midnight. It's grainy, it's raw, it doesn't enjoy the high production quality that I now have. Basically, I learned how to use a Zoom, but it'll do the trick. I hope this helps. Lunge towards the thumbs up and hit it. Have your say in the comments bay, and if you like my vibe, please subscribe. Woo! Woo!